Hey, welcome to the DAO stage, everybody. This is going to be a little bit different. We're actually like a project that's working. I want to walk through something that's happened in my community, what's kind of happened in the aftermath, and how we can use DAOs as part of a solution to solve a problem in this space. Closer? There we go, okay. Okay, so I'm Bud White. I'm the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of a company called Tassin. Tassin, we built a decentralized protocol to do bilateral swaps between different assets. So if you've got something on one chain, something on another chain, and you can't go to a DEX to trade it, we've built a protocol that is going to enable doing these chain-to-chain swaps. A little bit about me. I've been in crypto since 2009. That's cryptography. I started my career at BlackBerry and then got into what you would consider traditional blockchain cryptocurrency in 2016. Working for a company that wanted to bridge blockchain and traditional finance. So a lot of what I'm talking about today comes from like a capital markets background, but I am one of the original crypto nerds when it comes down to cryptography, so I kind of have both sides of the view on that. If you want to follow me, Twitter, 0xBud, Telegram, BudW, it'll be up here the entire time. Love to connect, love to hear stories, all of that. Okay, so the title of the chat today is Exchanges, Trusts, and DAO. Who here has heard about the centralized financial meltdowns in the past 3 months? Okay, more importantly, who has taken losses due to assets tied up in a centralized organization that blocked your withdrawals? Only one, two, okay. I want to talk to the two of you after. I want to hear your stories in depth. Most of you have heard what has happened. I'm going to go through just a brief history of like the last 3 months of financial insanity in crypto. Okay, agenda, how centralization has kind of broken consumer trust, why we even have centralization within crypto to begin with, because it's kind of an oxymoron because we're all in it to be decentralized. How we're going to restore consumer trust, and a lot of this has to do with DAOs in the future and what's going to come out of the burning companies like FTX, and then how DAOs fit into this trustless future, right? And building better consumer products. Okay, so we'll go through just like a brief history of like how centralized companies work. So whether this is an exchange, a yield generating product, really any product that you have to like register as a business in the United States or whatever legal jurisdiction you are in and take assets from somebody, essentially you're creating a bank account or an asset account, and you're as a depositor putting those assets into an account. Now, we all know that money and crypto and everything is a bearer instrument, so you give it to somebody, it's theirs, right? We've all heard the OG term, not your keys, not your crypto. Essentially, these centralized companies are taking your assets and just saying, trust me, I'll give it back to you when you need to withdraw, or you want to do a trade, or whatever the business model is. So the depositors trust these businesses to do what they claim. If in the case of Aave and geez, I'm losing my memory. And FTX, right? It's that you're going to deposit it, and I can do a trade, or I can do yield generation, or whatever the product may be. But these centralized businesses then have done other things, right? We've seen use of funds where they weren't allowed, right? So FTX taking depositor funds to go and make big leverage bets, reinvesting these funds in higher than stated vehicles. So with a number of the yield generation asset or platforms, they were dialing up the risk so that when there was a downturn in trading in crypto, it left a lot of bad debt and holes on the cap table. And then upright stealing. So we've seen this with FTX. We saw this with Quadriga in Canada. Assets that go into an account are just sitting there without somebody or a DAO or a regulator looking at it. They can just up and leave. So a lot of theft took place due to poor risk management, and ultimately, and we saw this through Twitter like almost every week for the last 3 months, somebody calls out that their temporarily blocking withdrawals from a protocol or an exchange or a company. And then we find out that actually they had really poor risk management, the money's gone, it was either a Ponzi or mismanagement of funds. And then we're left, at least 2 of you guys, with losses, unfortunately. Okay, so I was down in DC 2 weeks ago for a crypto policy summit, and I'm not a big politics guy. I don't think many of us are in the crypto space, but Representative Tom Emmer said something that really impacted me. He said, and this is with reference to what happened to FTX, this was not a failure of crypto, this is not a failure of technology, it's a failure of character, right? And when we put money in centralized projects, institutions, companies, really we're trusting that the person or people who are managing this are going to do what they say they're going to do, right? So let's take a step back and why centralization? Because everyone was shaking their head yes when I said, why are we even putting assets into centralized institutions? So Bitcoin white paper, we just celebrated the 14-year anniversary on October 31st. That's a long time. Satoshi stated that there's a really good way to do peer-to-peer transfer of value, but it happened to be unilateral, meaning I can pay for a service, I can send you Bitcoin, no one person, company, entity can block that. The entire community would have to vote in majority to call us a bad actor or stop that transaction. Okay, so what happened was, obviously, after Bitcoin, we had other chains, Ethereum, Solana, and everything came after it, and we wanted to trade one asset for another, which is essentially a bilateral trade. You give me one thing, I give you another. They're on different chains. So the financial world said, hey, we have a solution for this. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. We'll create a company, you put your asset in, I put my asset in, and we'll run a clearing and exchange business. So that's kind of where Mt. Gox started, and then all of the other exchanges after that. It was the most simple form that we had, right? It was a legal structure. Everybody understood how it works, how to put money into it, how to get money out of it. So we really reverted all the way back to what was easiest, right? But when we think about it, we have the tools available to us within crypto to be able to do these bilateral trades. We have a number of things available to us, and I'll get to that in 1 second. Okay, so how do we solve this trust issue, right? Number one, I know a lot of people are cringing right now because I put the word policy on screen, and we all know that that means regulation, but I didn't want to write it down that way. But I will tell you, so coming out of the policy summit in DC 2 weeks ago, the commissioner of the CFTC gave a talk, and she said that when LedgerX was petitioning to get a business license and to be a futures exchange, they went through and said, okay, for a regular exchange of this type, you need to do all of these things, but because you're crypto and it's a more risky asset class, there are all of these other things that we're going to put on top of you, such as putting an entire year's worth of operating capital into a bank account, making sure that all trades that are put on the exchange are fully collateralized, things that you might not do with traditional assets like oil and other types of futures, but they determined it was a bit more risky, and they said to do business, this is what you need to have to do. And she stated in her speech at the policy summit that this was an example of policy doing something good. Because if you look at the Chapter 11 filing for FTX and its umbrella of side companies, shell companies, and purchase companies, I think there were 7 companies called out that were not insolvent, and one of them was LedgerX. And she cited that it was the CFTC's oversight that imposed all of these capital requirements. The panel before us was talking about taking 10% off chain and using it for other investments or a rainy day fund. That's kind of essentially what policymakers suggested in the case of LedgerX and now FTX are a part of it. But let's not focus on that too much. I think some regulation can be good, but that's not really what we want to talk about here today. Trust can be solved with technology. So I stated before that we ended up going back to what was easiest for us, which was the centralized model. But we have blockchain and its immutability. We have smart contracts and their certainty of execution, and we have DAOs for governance. We have all the tools requisite to be able to do crypto exchanges so we can all move off of Coinbase, Binance, FTX, if you still can. Okay, so what have we built? I'm kind of here talking about my story of like what's my problem, what we have built, and how we're using DAOs. So my company TASM, we built a trustless protocol to be able to do bilateral swaps, right? So it's a non-custodial exchange. It has a centralized order book, so it looks like you're trading on Coinbase or Binance or KuCoin, but you're not depositing your assets. They're all sitting in a smart contract, locked. You have full custody all the time. The settlement, though, is decentralized. We farm it out to a decentralized settlement layer. You run a node just like you'd run a Bitcoin mining node. And we're using a DAO to view, to set all the rules and do all the governance of that decentralized settlement layer. So our use of DAO, so our DAO is made up of people who are running nodes. So they have the power to do very simple things in an exchange scenario. Set settlement fees and their distributions to each of the members. Add and remove blockchains. We are a multi-chain swap, so you can securely trade from one asset to another. Dispute resolution processes. Obviously, there are bad actors, or if there's financial incentive, you'll find bad actors. And blacklisting operators and participating exchanges. So the DAO runs the settlement layer. We've built a reference exchange on top of it, but anybody could build whatever you want on top of it, an NFT exchange, an auction exchange, anything like that. Okay, so I mean, the point I want to leave to you is like the future is trustless. I've got trustless on my hat. I hate that we've sunk down to using these centralized, I guess I should say, the popularization of centralized companies, entities, and processes within our decentralized community, I think, is the cancer that we need to cut out in this downswing of the market. And we have everything that we need to be able to build it. So that's really it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. Thank you.